XRP versus the rest of crypto, the final settlement layer. Since Bitcoin's launch in 2009, thousands of cryptocurrencies have emerged, each claiming a piece of the financial future. Some position themselves as money, others as platforms, others as experiments in governance or culture. But as the dust begins to settle, one question rises above all the noise. Which asset will become the final settlement layer of the Internet of Value? For many, the assumption has been that crypto is a winner-takes-all game. Bitcoin is digital gold, Ethereum is the world computer. Stablecoins digitize fiat. But the deeper truth is that most of these assets solve pieces of the puzzle, not the whole picture. Settlement, the ability to move trillions instantly, reliably, and across borders, remains unsolved at scale, and that is where XRP stands apart. Bitcoin is powerful as a store of value, but it is slow, energy-intensive, and unsuitable for high-volume payments. Ethereum unleashed programmability, but its network clogs and fees spike under pressure. Stablecoins brought stability, but they remain dollar-centric and bound by issuer risk. Even the wave of new competitors, from Solana's speed to Algorand's sustainability, to Polkadot and Cosmos's interoperability, all add innovation, but none fully solve the global settlement problem. XRP's design from day one was different. It wasn't created as an experiment in ideology or culture. It wasn't trying to be everything to everyone. It was engineered with laser focus on one mission: to become the digital bridge for all value. Fast, cheap, green, and built for interoperability, XRP doesn't seek to replace fiat, stablecoins, or CBDCs. It seeks to connect them. This positioning is why XRP continues to stand out among thousands of tokens. It isn't competing to dominate DeFi or NFTs or meme culture. It's aiming at the plumbing of global finance, the invisible rails that make commerce and settlement possible. If Bitcoin is digital gold and Ethereum is digital infrastructure, XRP is the digital plumbing, unseen by the public, but powering everything behind the scenes. As the crypto industry matures, the fragmentation of liquidity across chains, tokens, and protocols has become the greatest challenge. Billions sit siloed in ecosystems that cannot talk to each other. XRP's role as the neutral bridge positions it to solve this fragmentation, enabling true interoperability at scale. In doing so, it doesn't just compete with one asset. It positions itself against the entire crypto market. This documentary explores XRP's role as the potential final settlement layer, how Bitcoin, Ethereum, stablecoins, and altcoins each solve parts of the puzzle, but fail at global settlement. Why XRP's neutrality and efficiency position it uniquely for cross-border value transfer. How tokenization, CBDCs, and interoperability all point to the need for a final bridge. And the long arc, whether XRP becomes the hidden backbone of the Internet of Value, outlasting and connecting the rest of crypto. The crypto industry may have started with thousands of contenders, but history rarely remembers the noise. It remembers the infrastructure that endures. This is the story of XRP versus the rest of crypto, the final settlement layer. Part 1, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the first generation of crypto. The story of crypto begins with Bitcoin, the spark that ignited a global movement. In 2009, it introduced the radical idea that money could exist outside government control, secured by cryptography and consensus instead of central banks. Bitcoin's mission was simple but powerful: become digital gold, a store of value immune to inflation and censorship. And in that role, it has succeeded. With trillions in market cap and adoption by individuals, corporations, and even nations, Bitcoin remains the flagship of crypto. But Bitcoin's design carried limitations. It was never optimized for speed or scalability. Its proof-of-work consensus consumes enormous energy, and its transaction throughput, roughly 7 per second, makes it unsuitable for handling global payment rails. Bitcoin became a symbol of freedom and scarcity, but not a settlement layer for trillions of daily transactions. Then came Ethereum, which expanded the vision of blockchain beyond money. Launched in 2015, Ethereum introduced smart contracts, programmable code that could automate transactions and create entire digital economies. Suddenly, crypto wasn't just about storing value. It was about building systems, decentralized finance, DeFi, non-fungible tokens, NFTs, decentralized autonomous organizations, DAOs, and tokenization of assets. Ethereum became the world computer, hosting thousands of applications and billions in value. Yet Ethereum, too, struggles under the weight of its success. Gas fees spike during congestion, transactions can be slow, and even with proof-of-stake upgrades, scalability remains a constant challenge. Layer 2 networks have emerged to patch these issues, but complexity grows with every new solution. Ethereum revolutionized programmability, but like Bitcoin, it wasn't engineered as a final settlement layer for the world's value flows. Together, Bitcoin and Ethereum define the first generation of crypto. Bitcoin as digital gold, a hedge against inflation and centralization. Ethereum as digital infrastructure, powering decentralized applications and innovation. Both assets are pillars of the industry, and both will likely endure. But neither solves the most pressing challenge of global finance: interoperable settlement at scale. Bitcoin stores value, Ethereum builds ecosystems, but the world still lacks the digital asset that can move value instantly across borders, currencies, and networks. This is where XRP enters the picture. Launched in 2012, it learned from the limitations of Bitcoin and Ethereum. XRP wasn't designed to be digital gold or a programmable platform. It was designed for payments: fast, green, cheap, and neutral. It targeted the core inefficiency of the financial system, the trillions locked up in friction-heavy settlement rails. In the broader crypto landscape, XRP doesn't compete directly with Bitcoin's narrative of scarcity or Ethereum's culture of innovation. Instead, it complements them while aiming for the one role they cannot fulfill: becoming the final settlement layer. The first generation of crypto proved that blockchain could hold value and build ecosystems. The next generation must prove that it can move value across the world, seamlessly and at scale. That challenge is where XRP's story begins. Part 2: Altcoins, Stablecoins, and the Fragmentation of Liquidity. As Bitcoin and Ethereum rose to dominance, the floodgates opened. Thousands of altcoins launched, each promising to solve the weaknesses of the first generation. Some were designed for speed, like Solana, boasting lightning-fast throughput for DeFi and NFTs. Others prioritized sustainability, like Algorand, touting carbon neutrality and energy efficiency. Polkadot and Cosmos pitched interoperability, building ecosystems of connected blockchains. Cardano embraced academic rigor and peer review, while Avalanche focused on subnets and institutional-grade tokenization. Each of these altcoins contributed real innovation. Together, they demonstrated that blockchain could be faster, greener, and more flexible than Bitcoin or Ethereum. But with innovation came fragmentation. Instead of one unified ecosystem, crypto splintered into thousands of silos. Liquidity, the lifeblood of finance, was trapped in walled gardens, unable to move freely between chains. Billions of dollars in assets sat idle, awaiting bridges and cross-chain protocols that were often clunky or insecure. The rise of stablecoins added both opportunity and complexity. Tether's USDT and Circle's USDC became the dominant liquidity layer in crypto trading, powering exchanges, DeFi, and settlements. Trillions flowed through these digital dollars, making them the most transacted assets in crypto. Their simplicity was their strength: a dollar on-chain, easy to understand, easy to use. But their scope was narrow. They digitized the US dollar, but did not solve the deeper issue of connecting different currencies, assets, and jurisdictions. Stablecoins also introduced risks. Their reliance on reserves tied them to the stability of banks and regulators. USDT faced years of scrutiny over transparency, while USDC's exposure to Silicon Valley Bank revealed the fragility of its backing. Unlike decentralized assets, stablecoins carried issuer risk, trust in the company holding reserves. For institutions, this made them useful but not bulletproof. Meanwhile, altcoins competed fiercely but often lacked adoption beyond their niche. Solana captured NFT culture. Polkadot and Cosmos courted developers. Algorand pursued sustainability-minded governments. Yet none managed to solve the fundamental inefficiency of global settlement. They addressed symptoms: speed, energy use, governance, without fixing the root problem of fractured liquidity. By the mid-2020s, crypto looked like a patchwork quilt. Each project added color and texture, but the fabric was torn by incompatibility. Liquidity was abundant but scattered, making global interoperability elusive. For traders and enthusiasts, this diversity fueled excitement. For banks and institutions, it signaled caution. Fragmentation is the enemy of efficiency. And without efficiency, crypto could not scale into the backbone of the financial system. This is the environment in which XRP's neutrality shines. Unlike altcoins chasing niches or stablecoins tied to fiat, XRP is positioned as the universal connector. It doesn't compete to host ecosystems or mimic dollars, it bridges them. In a world fractured by liquidity silos, XRP's role is not to be another silo but to be the highway between them all. Altcoins and stablecoins proved blockchain's versatility, but they also proved the need for something greater, a settlement layer capable of weaving these fragments into a unified network. And that is exactly what XRP was built to do. Part 3. Tokenization, CBDCs, and the search for a settlement layer. The 2020s marked a turning point for blockchain, the rise of tokenization and central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. What began as an experiment in trading digital coins evolved into a full-scale reimagining of finance itself. Real-world assets, from real estate to stocks to carbon credits, began migrating onto blockchains. Central banks, once skeptical of crypto, started designing their own digital currencies. Together, these forces created a tidal wave of demand for one thing: settlement infrastructure. Tokenization promised efficiency. Instead of paperwork, middlemen, and delays, assets could trade 24/7 on-chain, instantly transferable and programmable. By 2030, experts projected hundreds of trillions of dollars of assets could be tokenized. But tokenization without interoperability is chaos. A tokenized bond on one network, a tokenized stock on another, and a digital euro on a third are meaningless if they cannot move seamlessly across systems. Without a common settlement layer, tokenization risks becoming just another fragmented experiment. CBDCs added urgency. More than 100 central banks began researching or piloting digital currencies. China launched the digital yuan. Europe pursued the digital euro. The US debated a digital dollar. Each promised to modernize domestic payments, reduce costs, and increase financial inclusion. But CBDCs also risked creating digital islands. A digital yuan might move quickly in China, but how would it settle against a digital euro in Europe or a tokenized peso in Latin America? The search for a settlement layer became unavoidable. Stablecoins offered part of the solution, but they remained pegged to fiat and subject to regulatory battles. Altcoins like Polkadot or Cosmos offered interoperability, but lacked institutional trust. Bitcoin and Ethereum were too slow or too expensive to handle trillions in daily flows. The world needed something neutral, scalable, efficient, and already battle-tested in cross-border payments. That is where XRP enters the equation. Its neutrality, not tied to any nation, issuer, or single use case, makes it uniquely positioned as the settlement asset between tokenized assets and CBDCs. Ripple's partnerships with central banks on pilots and its RippleNet corridors already moving billions demonstrate its real-world viability. XRP doesn't compete with tokenized assets or CBDCs, it connects them. Energy efficiency further strengthens the case. In an era where ESG goals matter, central banks and enterprises cannot adopt infrastructure that drains massive electricity. XRP's consensus model consumes a fraction of the energy of proof-of-work chains, aligning it with sustainability mandates. Most importantly, XRP has regulatory clarity. After its legal battle in the US, XRP is recognized as not a security when sold on exchanges, a status stablecoins and other assets still lack. For institutions tasked with moving trillions, that clarity is not optional. It is essential. As tokenization and CBDCs scale, the world is converging on a truth Ripple understood over a decade ago. Innovation alone is not enough. You need settlement. Tokenized assets and digital currencies are the fuel. XRP can be the engine that moves them globally. The rise of tokenization and CBDCs makes the question of a final settlement layer not theoretical, but urgent. And in that urgency, XRP's design and purpose look less like one option among many, and more like the answer the system has been waiting for. Part 4. XRP's neutrality versus the rest of crypto. In a space defined by tribalism, XRP's greatest strength is what it isn't. It isn't a meme token bound to the tides of social media. It isn't a governance experiment, fractured by community disputes. It isn't pegged to fiat, trapped by issuer risk. And it isn't a smart contract platform chasing every new trend. XRP's identity is neutrality. And in the liquidity war, that neutrality is power. Most cryptocurrencies compete by trying to dominate their niche. Bitcoin thrives as digital gold, but its community resists change, prioritizing scarcity over adaptability. Ethereum embraces flexibility, constantly evolving to meet developer demand, but it grows increasingly complex and fragmented with layer 2s and scaling patches. Solana pushes raw speed, often at the expense of reliability. Each project is bound by the culture and priorities of its community, making them strong in one dimension, but limited in others. XRP was engineered without those ideological constraints. Its mission has remained steady for over a decade. Move value instantly, cheaply, and globally. It doesn't matter whether that value is dollars, euros, CBDCs, stablecoins, or tokenized assets. XRP doesn't pick sides, it connects them. That neutrality is what makes it attractive to institutions who care less about narratives and more about results. Neutrality also solves the trust problem. Stablecoins ask users to trust issuers. DAOs ask users to trust governance. Altcoins ask users to trust roadmaps and communities that may or may not deliver. XRP asks users to trust math. Its consensus model provides finality in seconds, without proof-of-work waste or central issuers. That simplicity is a feature, not a flaw, in the eyes of banks and regulators who prioritize clarity. This is why RippleNet and on-demand liquidity corridors use XRP at the core. Institutions don't want to gamble on cultural movements or unproven governance models. They want rails that just work. And unlike chains chasing every new narrative, XRP has never drifted from its core use case. The consistency builds credibility. Neutrality also future-proofs XRP against the rapid churn of crypto innovation. In the last decade, fads like ICOs, DeFi summer, yield farming, NFT manias, and meme coins have risen and fallen. Entire ecosystems have come and gone. XRP, by focusing narrowly on settlement, has avoided these cycles of hype and collapse. Its neutrality ensures it doesn't live or die by a single trend, but neutrality isn't glamorous. XRP is often overlooked by retail investors chasing the next 100x altcoin. It lacks the cultural hype that fuels Solana NFTs or Ethereum DeFi. Yet this absence of hype is precisely why XRP continues to appeal to serious players. Central banks, financial institutions, and enterprises building tokenized systems. For them, neutrality isn't boring, it's essential. In the long arc of finance, infrastructure rarely becomes popular. Nobody gets excited about Swift or Fedwire, yet they power trillions daily. XRP's destiny may be the same. Not a cultural movement, but the invisible bridge quietly connecting the global economy. Against the noise of the rest of crypto, XRP's neutrality is its loudest signal. And in the race for the final settlement layer, neutrality may be the trait that crowns it the winner. Part 5. The Long Arc. XRP as the final settlement layer. Every financial revolution produces thousands of experiments, but history only remembers the infrastructure that lasts. The dot-com boom gave us countless startups, yet only a few, Amazon, Google, PayPal, became foundational. In crypto, the same pattern is emerging. Thousands of tokens will fade into history, but a handful will endure because they serve a purpose no one else can. XRP's long arc points towards such a destiny, not as the flashiest coin, but as the final settlement layer of the Internet of Value. The reason is simple. The world runs on settlement. Every trade, every payment, every exchange of assets requires a final step, where value changes hands. That step must be fast, cheap, reliable, and neutral. Bitcoin cannot scale to it. Ethereum is too expensive and fragmented. Stablecoins depend on issuers and remain dollar-centric. Altcoins chase niches but lack global reach. XRP, by design, checks every box. It is efficient. 3 to 5 second settlement at near zero cost. It is sustainable, using a consensus model that aligns with ESG goals. It is neutral, not tied to any one country, currency, or issuer. And it has regulatory clarity, something few other assets can claim. These traits don't just make XRP competitive, they make it inevitable. As tokenization grows into a market measured in hundreds of trillions, as CBDCs become the new standard for fiat, and as interoperability becomes the make-or-break factor for finance, the system will need a settlement layer capable of connecting it all. XRP doesn't compete to be everything. It positions itself as the quiet backbone, the unseen rail that ensures everything works together. In this role, XRP may never capture the cultural hype of Bitcoin or the experimental energy of Ethereum. It may not dominate retail headlines or NFT manias, Instead, it will operate like Swift or Visa's backend. Invisible, indispensable, and irreplaceable. The public may not notice, but the global economy will run on it. This is the long arc of XRP. The transformation from one asset among thousands to the neutral bridge asset of the digital economy. Not by replacing Bitcoin as digital gold or Ethereum as a world computer, but by solving the harder, quieter problem of global settlement. When the history of this era is written, crypto will be remembered not for the coins that sparked fads, but for the infrastructure that powered the future. And in that history, XRP may be remembered as the asset that turned the dream of the Internet of Value into reality. This is the story of XRP versus the rest of crypto, the final settlement layer. The final settlement layer, Bitcoin, became digital gold. Ethereum became the world computer. Stablecoins brought fiat on-chain. Thousands of altcoins filled every niche imaginable. But settlement, the invisible plumbing of global finance, is still waiting for its champion. That is where XRP stands apart. Neutral, efficient, and built for interoperability. It isn't chasing trends. It's solving the hardest problem in finance, moving value across borders, currencies, and systems instantly. The rest of crypto may build ecosystems and headlines. XRP may quietly build the rails of the Internet of Value. In the long arc of history, hype fades, infrastructure remains, and XRP is positioned to be the settlement layer that outlasts them all. Subscribe to LTL Productions for more deep dives into the Internet of Value. From XRP to stablecoins, CBDCs to tokenization, we're documenting the future of money, one story at a time. Don't miss it.